Nicole Strickland. I have been fascinated with the unknown and paranormal realms since childhood. After a profound experience with my grandmother's spirit 20 years ago, I have been on a quest to observe, study, investigate, and communicate with the afterlife and beyond. It's been an ongoing journey of exploration and discovery, one that has taught me how mortality and the spirit world are forever bonded through the veils of time.
Good evening, everyone, on this wonderful Thursday, September 29th, almost done with the month there. I hope you are all doing well. Of course, you are tuning right back into the Afterlife Chronicles tonight. I am your host, Nicole Strickland, on the WLTK-DB.com network there. If you have not followed the show, you can do that on its socials at WLTK-DB. And of course, the Afterlife Chronicles at Afterlife Chronicles and beyond. And of course, its Podbean page, afterlifechronicles.podbean.com. And of course, the show or the station now has shows on its mobile app. So whether you're an iPhone user or Droid user, make sure to get that WLTK-DB mobile app. Check out the merch store on WLTK-DB.com. I'm sporting a nice long-sleeved black comfortable t-shirt here, which is nice. And then, of course, I will have some merch coming soon as well. So we have a fantastic night planned for you. Just a couple of announcements. First of all, prayers for those out in Florida. I know Hurricane Ian is pretty powerful, so hope everyone is doing well out there. I know that something around 2.6 million people are without power now, so prayers for everyone's safety. And then, of course, the OC Paracon is now among us. In 2 more days, I will be leaving San Diego early in the morning to head up to Anaheim, spending the night there. And it's going to be a fantastic event organized by Henry San Miguel and Unearthing the Supernatural. Let's see, Kelly Brickle and Peter Orbea from the station as well will be there. So it's going to be a great 2-day paranormal convention. Very much looking forward to it, at the Sonesta Hotel in Anaheim, right across the street from Disneyland. And I know some people are going to Disneyland. I can't this time, maybe next time. Let's see, tomorrow night, Haunted Voices Radio. You can join Todd and I as we have a nice discussion about doppelgangers and poltergeists and different types of ghosts and energies. And people will be sharing a lot of their ghost stories and experiences on the show as well. So that is tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Pacific, let's see, 10 Central, 11 Eastern. That's about it right now. We are going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, we are going to bring in tonight's very special guest. So stay tuned and we will see you in a couple seconds.
If you're a fan of the paranormal world, then you'll love WLTK-DB Talk Radio. Talk shows bringing you the latest on everything paranormal, cryptozoological, metaphysical, true crime, psychic readings, and more. The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.
All right, there are 4 minutes past the hour. You're joining the Afterlife Chronicles tonight. I'm your host, Nicole Strickland, on WLTK-DB.com. Let's go ahead and bring in tonight's very special guest. Adam Gell has a fantastic story, fantastic experiences having to do with past life regression and Akashic Records. He is a retired high school physical education teacher, podcaster, and Reiki practitioner. So we are very honored tonight to have him on the show. So Adam, how are you doing tonight?
Okay, and welcome. Thank you for having me here, Nicole.
Absolutely.
I'm honored to be here and share my story with everyone. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've been reading about your story and it's very inspiring. And so I'm very much looking forward to this. And I apologize. I have a clock right there that's chiming. I live right near Miramar, so we have jets flying around. Tonight's their practice night, I guess. So you might hear that during the show.
Right. That's okay.
So it's all good, right? We just roll with it. So you have an amazing story with past life regression and Akashic Records. Why don't we start there with your journey with this, because it's just utterly fascinating.
Well, I was a junior high school teacher, physical education teacher, for about 30 years. I finished teaching about 2 years ago. And I would say maybe about 10 years ago, having had Lyme disease, I was maybe awoken to the fact that I was more aware of my environment and the things that were creating anxiety for me and different types of emotions that I was getting in touch with. And one of the things that I noticed in my gymnasium was every time I looked up at the school vent up in the ceiling, I would run to have the custodian shut the heat off or just like stop the heat from coming in through the vent. And for me, it was either a paranoid feeling, and my coworkers would say, "What's the matter? Did you ask him to shut the vents?" And I said, "Actually, I did." And it was so strong, such a strong feeling for me to wind up doing this, that I was just thinking to myself, I didn't understand the direct feeling, the strong emotions that were tied to this. But as I was going through these feelings, I developed asthma, and one of the coworkers of mine had told me, she said, there's a person I know that works with holistic, healing. And at that point, I was just taking, medications and stuff like that. I had no clue of what holistic entailed, other than the fact that I was interested in acupressure and acupuncture, and I was interested in, holistic to some extent. So what happened was I contacted this gentleman on the phone, and as he heard my voice, he said to me, "You have asthma," without me telling him. So he said, "Why don't you come in and we'll see what I can do." So I did come in, and as I was going for repeated sessions, I was recognizing the fact that I was opening up to this energy that was, that he was working with, and he was telling me, "You have this ability yourself to do the work that I'm doing." And as I went further and further, I was becoming more intuitive. Whatever, he was telling me about patients, and I would tell him what was wrong with them, as he knew himself. But as I kept going further and further, he would tell me, you were from World War II. And I didn't ask him any further questions because I didn't have any recollection at that point, or couldn't tie any experiences to the past. And so at that point, I just took it in, I digested it a little bit, and I stored it there. And as I was going for these healing sessions, I was opening up, as he had said, to more of an intuitive mindset. And I was opening up all my chakras and having the ability to feel, a deeper connection to spirit and intuition. And so I connected to the Akashic Records. I read a book by Gabrielle Orr, which was called One True Love. As I read the book, I also said, you know what, maybe I'll get a reading. And the reading, proceeded, and I didn't tell her anything about me. I'd asked the questions why I'm feeling the asthma and these particular things. And she said, "Do you speak German?" So, well, I lived in Germany in 1987. And this reading was maybe about 6 years ago. So in 1980, I lived in Germany. I was married to a German woman. And while I was in Germany, I spoke German fluently within 5 months. I almost matriculated at Frankfurt University. So people in Germany were saying, well, how did you speak so quick? How did you learn so fast? And as I was roaming around Germany, I felt sort of like this was home to me. Having had a Jewish mother and a Russian father biologically, and this deep connection to Germany at that point in 1987, and then as it faded away and I got divorced, and this all just slipped at my wayside. These memories, or this feeling of now understanding through this reading from the Akashic Record reading, that there was a connection to a past life in Germany. And the woman said, "You were a doctor in the concentration camps."
Wow.
The doctor in the concentration camps. People at work would call me Doc. They would call me Doc. And I spoke the language fluently. And I was interested in anatomy and physiology as a physical education teacher. It was one of my better subjects of interest and study. as the years progressed, and I was doing more, I was doing readings for people, and people doing readings for me. I had a client. Well, actually, before that, I went to a psychic medium workshop, and while I was at the workshop, they were burning the incense in the place, and I had asked the teacher if she could please put that out, and she asked me why, and I said, and the girl next to me answered, "It wasn't from this life; it was from your past life." The smoke.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I said, okay. Once she said that to me, I knew the connection already from having had the reading. So I just kept my mouth closed and I put up with it. And then she said, you have to deal with this. I said, okay. The girl said that to me next to me, not the teacher. So as I was progressing, as I said before, I was doing a reading. I do the Akashic record readings. And I also do the distance Reiki. I do distance Reiki healing. And I had a client, and the client was, it was a Zoom meeting. Person was sitting down sitting on their couch. And then as the session was coming to a close, before I was finishing, the person got up and said, "I remember you." And I said, "Where?" She said, "From the concentration camps." And I said, "Wow." I said, the other people told me the same exact story, or at least that was the past life reading. And she said, "Yes, I see you there. It was just such a dark and gloomy atmosphere. And I see you there." And so I said, do me a favor. Now, I did a reading, an Akashic record reading for this particular past life on myself individually. And I found that I came from Berlin, and I had a German mother and a Jewish father. And I somehow found the street in my reading of where I was. And I did a remote viewing actually of the hospital, the Charité, which was the hospital where most of the doctors and Jewish doctors per se studied before they went off to become medical doctors. But more specifically, they were sent to the front to either serve in the German, help the soldiers. And then some of them were executed, which was what happened to me, I was told. But to get back to the dealing with the reading from the woman, I asked her, maybe, I told her that I had other readings done, that I was in fact the doctor in the concentration camps, and you're confirming that based upon your own, insight and intuition. And she said, absolutely. She said, I said, do me a favor, do a reading and see where you think I came from, and everything that has to do with that past life. So a week later, she comes back and she says, you were from Berlin, and you had a Christian mother and a Jewish father. And I said, that's exactly what I got.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So now my understanding of why I had these passions of something that was, related to a dark period in history, but yet it was something that evoked something in me that needed to be awoken and to be dealt with and cleansed from my system. And so I had interviewed someone on my podcast, this husband and wife, who have past life regressions and so on. They deal with past life regressions. And after the interview, I told them a little bit about my story that I'm telling you. And they said, Adam, I think there's somebody that's going to contact you. And I said, okay. I didn't know who it was and what it was related to. And then a woman contacts me, and she says, Adam, my name is so-and-so. I was born in France, or I don't know if she was born in France. She says, but you were the doctor in Auschwitz that saved my life.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, explain.
What?
I said, please explain. And she said, yes. She says, I was pregnant, and you pulled me off the line, and you saved me from I guess from death. And you helped you. She told me that I helped her by allowing her to work with me in the clinic, in the hospital, in one of the hospitals. And I did. So then I did a reading from Auschwitz, and I saw a white building. And she says, yes, that's the white building where I don't know what exactly took place there. And I didn't really want to know or get into it in detail, but it was something that I saw. And then I looked it up on the computer, and I saw the images of one of the buildings. There was only one white building. And she said she remembered that white building.
This is like incredible. And this is one of the reasons I think that we need to discuss past lives, and go into this regression, because you know, a lot of people go about their daily lives, and you know, you talk about certain emotions or certain things, certain places that evoke these feelings or these senses, and many times they stem from past lives. And so I think by studying it and getting to know where we were can really help us evolve in this life and even in future lives. Incredible story. Now, when you were getting these readings, like, how did you viscerally feel when you were, did it feel like an epiphany, like an aha moment, like, yes, that's absolutely right? Because I
Well, I didn't.
imagine, oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. No, for me, it was interesting because the things that I was passionate about, the interests that I had, the connection to the old feeling of being connected to Germany or Europe,
Right.
and the language and the interest and just the fascination of things that I had a connection to, had made me say, you know, how's this possible that I have such a strong feeling to these things when I've never experienced it, obviously, in this particular life, other than maybe going to Germany and then having an interest in it. It felt more home to me there than it was home being here. And yet it was connected to a dark part of history and also of my experience itself as well. But what I found is that I feel that we're repeating the cycles of things that we need to resolve in our lives, and so we're presented with the same issues, the same conflicts, so that we grow from the experience, and our soul develops and is able to overcome that particular trauma by either assisting other people in terms of giving them the insight of what they can do in a situation, or just, you know, evolving as a soul in general. I mean, we
Absolutely.
choose the lives that we have, and we have those particular virtues that we need to work on when we come back to this planet.
And that's the common denominator of the soul's journey in this in the Akashic records, and discovering more about past lives and the records. Now, for someone that is not familiar, of course, with the Akashic records, what is it? Like, how would you
Well,
tell that person? How would you describe it for that
yeah,
person?
well, the Akashic Records it's a vibrational library in the fifth dimension. It's not an actual physical library,
Right.
but it contains all the information of the universe, of all beings, like from the beginning of time and space. Like in the Old Testament, it would be considered the Book of Life.
Right. Okay.
But
Yeah.
it's an enduring record of all that happens and all that's ever happened in a time and field of information between the spaces of particles. So everything that we speak, everything how we act, whatever we do, is recorded as a vibrational, connection to the Akasha, and the Akasha records it as a vibrational like frequency, and then it gets stored. And a person like myself who reads the Akashic records is able to then access the information for a person's past lives, present moment, and future possibilities. Yeah.
This is so fascinating. Now, the people that you work with, are there some individuals that can really access the Akashic records a little bit more, I guess, easy than others, would you say? Or is it pretty much
Well,
middle of the road for everyone?
I think when we remove self-doubt from
Yeah.
opening up to spirit and allowing the intuition, the right side of our brain to be, more intuitive, to open ourselves up to that energy, especially from the eighth chakra on, we're able to then connect. I think everybody is capable of connecting. Some people receive the information in a different way. Some receive it through visual. Some hear through hearing. So each person is different, but the vibrational energy itself will always create a shift in the person who opens up the records for themselves. Whereas
Of
some
course.
people like myself, who's doing a reading, I'm receiving information, which I hear, and I get a download of information.
And so how does it come for you? Is it how, I guess my question is, when that information comes, I imagine it's a very visceral type of feeling.
It's almost you feel it without
Yeah.
any judgment. There's no judgment. There's a sense of openness. It's a sense of feeling it in your body without doubt.
Yes,
And
absolutely. That's kind of like what I was thinking. It's hard to put it into words, but you just know, and when you feel something and you feel that it fits, and you feel in your soul that that's right, you have to go with it. How can you how can you ignore that, right?
Right. Well, the information is when I'm doing a reading for someone, I'm opening up their particular records with a specific prayer. And that prayer is an energetic vibration, which allows me to then access that person's records themselves. So in doing the reading, I'm receiving information from a masters and teachers or ancestors, loved ones from the people who I'm doing the reading for. It's not information that I'm just seeing. It's also being presented to me. And then through that presentation, I don't interpret it. I tell the person if that makes sense, what the information that I'm passing through.
I bet the feedback too that they give you is just phenomenal when you
Yeah,
do
the
this.
feedback is good. The people, names and favorite colors and certain things which have a significance in a person's life in terms of a birthday, even a person passing, or whatever it may be. Bringing the information back to the past from someone's past, and the person not understanding why they're stuck and what parts of themselves that they left behind in their past that they haven't incorporated in their adult life, which creates that separation from themselves. But myself doing a reading and a person, obviously I don't know the person, and then me passing this information on, it helps the person assimilate that information back into their auric field, into the energy body.
Absolutely. And we have a comment here. So Facebook user says, absolutely right, Adam. In the religion of theosophy and the philosophical school called anthroposophy, the Akashic Records are like a compendium of all universal events, thoughts, words, emotions, and intent ever to have occurred in the past, present, or future in terms of all entities and life forms. And many forget that's not just human. So that's an interesting comment right there.
Right. That's right.
So absolutely. And then another interesting thing I thought of too, have you found, and even in the people that you've actually worked with, that a lot of the individuals that they know in this present life, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, have you found that those same people also in a past life you knew as well?
You're talking about me per se, or
Yeah,
client?
you and then as well as like some of the people you work with.
Well, I would say that I would say that the people that had these connections with have definitely had a connection to me in many lives, not just this particular life itself or the past life. Everybody shifts different characters and roles in the lives when we come into in this planet. So you could be the mother, you could be the father, you could be the sister or the brother, and we're just shifting roles to learn to play that particular energy, and then bring it in combination, and then work with one another to play the different roles of one person being in power, person being more in a submissive role, one person being the male, the female, and us carrying these energies with us and shifting from one life to the next, so that we do feel the gamut of what it means to be a human.
Absolutely. That's so well said. And going back to your, World War II and being a doctor and the Holocaust and all of that, there's I should say before that is I think a lot of synchronicities play into this as well. And I've actually learned throughout my life and in my work to pay attention more to all the different synchronicities because they tell a story and they teach us so much. So I was reading in your story too, and this is so interesting, and it goes back to past lives. The phobia of doctors and the striped
Yeah.
clothing.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, let's share that because I think it's
Yeah,
so
that was very
fascinating.
interesting because, well, I would say the phobia, or the fear of doctors, came about when I was going through this period. Actually, when I reached this stage of where I had this feeling of the vents in the building making me sick and having a
Right.
fear for them, and then having Lyme disease, and then I dreamt that I had Lyme disease, and I had Lyme disease. I went to the doctor and I said to the doctor, "I have Lyme disease." He says, I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "Just give me a test, please." And once I had that premonition, it came to the point where now I had to question doctors. And so this was where I thought this particular, like, time and timeline came in to be now. All right, before that I wasn't fearful of doctors, but now something's causing me to have a mistrust. And what is it? So I couldn't figure it out. As soon as the doctor entered the room, years before that I was okay. Now I was mistrusting, and I didn't understand why I had this deep paranoia, as if I was going to be taken away and I wasn't going to be released. And so, having had the reading as well, I was told, and this made complete sense to me, you felt that you were not trusted as a doctor because of what you had to do and the guilt that you suffered.
There you go. There's the connection.
And the connection was, here I'm going to a doctor, and you mistrust the person who's supposed to take care of you, but displacing what you once were onto this doctor. And I actually felt completely like the doctor knew nothing, as he just was going through protocol.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt. And I would, reach this conclusion that I would have like a real panic attack. I'd be like shaking and freaking out. As soon as I got out, I would like wipe my brow and say, I made it. As if I made it out, like, without being taken. That's how I felt. I felt mistrusting of myself, having had this past life of what I had to do. And now looking at the doctor in the same role as being someone who was just going along with a system of having to just, do what they had to do to I don't know, dispose of you maybe, or get rid of you, or follow protocol. And, you couldn't really speak your mind or say what you had to say to help somebody out.
Right. And then,
and then as I recalled and I felt this, I said, I can never, everybody said, I want you to wear this shirt. The shirt will look good on you. And it was a striped shirt running vertical. And I said, I cannot wear that shirt. It makes me nauseous or sick. I could wear a horizontal, a stripe going the other way with no problem. But pajamas, I can never wear pajamas. Like if I wore pajamas with stripes, I felt like I was sick. And everybody would say, how come you can't wear pajamas? I said, nah, you only wear pajamas when you're sick. And I didn't understand how people wore pajamas. I look like, and some people, like, they could look cool, like they could look like they have a pipe in their hand or wear like a scarf. I said, okay, like that type of look, maybe, but regular pajamas, no, I couldn't wear it. And it scared me. As well as other things that I just came to think about recently, which is when I went to camp. I had to go to sleepaway camp, and I went for 2 weeks, and we went on a horse and buggy ride, like a hay ride, and I was crying by myself, and I was looking over the mountain of the camp, saying, "I want to get home. I want to get home." And I was with my cousins, and they were like in their own little world, but I was in my own little world. Now I connected that recently to the feeling of being taken away.
Right. And then and this is a prime example, the stripes, going back into the Holocaust, that's what they wore.
Yes.
That's where that fear emanates from. So that's a prime example. And something I actually have a fear of flying, and I always have had a fear of flying. And what's interesting is going in my past, I've had relatives that actually passed away sadly on the Hindenburg disaster. So that could be kind of where maybe my fear of flying comes in. So it's just interesting how we can connect and really examine the aspects of our current life and really see, like you said, how our soul's evolving and what in repeating the same lessons until we learn the lessons. And really, this is why I love past life regression, because it can really tell us a lot about where we came and what we need to learn now, and then even moving forward as our souls ascend. So very, very, very fascinating.
I think a lot of the lessons are self-love and self-acceptance.
There you go. Yeah.
I think the fact that we go through these harsh experiences in many lives, inevitably we have to love ourselves and accept ourselves in order to love and accept others as well. And I think the journey takes us back always to that in many situations.
Absolutely.
Whatever difficulty we experience, we have to learn to love ourselves.
It's interesting too, because some of the most endearing people that I've met are ones that have gone through trauma, that have had past trauma, whether it's childhood trauma or some sort of PTSD or just going through a lot of challenges. Some of the most endearing people, and it's like you first have to love yourself before you can love others. That's just prime right there. So
absolutely.
And then let's get into some of the healing practices that you've gone through: chakra healing, sound healing, Reiki, even, which is incorporated so much. I mean, I'm attuned to Reiki, and I've actually given it and I've received it, and it's phenomenal. It's really helped me a lot.
Yeah, well, I do Reiki work. I also do shamanic work.
That's right. Yeah.
I do Andean work, Andean tradition work. Olympia, which is a Andean tradition of clearing the energetic body, removing the energies that accumulate around the body, and removing, the energy that has the potential to create disease and ailments and depression in the different areas of the body. So it's usually the routine is clearing the energetic body with an egg. The egg absorbs the negativity from the body, and it has its own porous system where when you rub it over the different chakra areas of the body, it removes negative energy. It has the potential sometimes to actually crack from the high amounts of energy in a specific area of the body. I incorporate that with sound and pendulum healing, which is removing each
Nice.
specific chakra, and then closing the chakras and focusing in on which chakras need the most assistance and sending energy to those places. I use the different vibrational sounds that resonate with each particular chakra. And so those are the basic things, but for the most part, that's what I do. But for the most part, the Akashic record readings is something that actually, since our emotional body is tied to our physical body, and most of our physical ailments come from our emotional stagnation or conflicts that we don't resolve. Many times the Akashic record readings has that potential to assist people to go back to a place that they forgot about or didn't want to remember. And it helps bring back that part of the soul that was detached from the person. And it connects, it puts the pieces together. So
Right. That's an excellent way to put it. And actually, I forgot to flash this earlier. This is a great comment by Rob Thompson. He said it's like a metaphysical credit report that changes once because you access it. So that's
excellent.
That's a good way to put it. I think that's very, very an astute way to put it. Getting back to Akashic Records, have you delved into what the scientific community says about it and what its analysis is of it, or do you try to keep that separate?
Yeah, well, Irvin Laszlo, who was 2004 and 2005, was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, and he validated.
That's right. Yeah,
validated the existence of the scientific view of the Akasha.
Mm-hmm.
They acknowledge that there's that space in between space that interplays with the emotions in the quantum field.
Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah. So it's an interweb. Every atom and every cell, exists. It exists everywhere, but it's the space between space. And so I think Einstein called it like a spooky phenomenon.
Yes. Yes, he did. Yes.
And so they know that our emotion has an impact on the quantum field. Non-locality, people could influence atoms and make them change their direction and movement based upon one person walking into a room and another person walking into the room. And even if the person was concentrating on it from a distance, just like Reiki, they know that it has the potential to shift energies and manifest changes in people. So there's science recognizes this, definitely.
Yes, I've actually read some articles myself on it, and it's the whole concept too of the whole collective consciousness to me is very important as well, and to realize that we're all connected in more ways than we know, and not just with ourselves, but with the different universes and galaxies beyond. And so remote viewing you do as well, and that's something that I do, and it comes natural, and it's hard to explain how it's done. But how have you, or I guess my question is, through exploring Akashic Records and through past life regression, has that helped you to improve the way you remote view?
I would say yes and no, because sometimes sometimes your intuition is not always doesn't always serve in a specific type of target in terms of doing the remote viewing, because you do have feedback and hits that emotional energies that come in that can influence or shift the actual target of what you're really looking at in terms of AOLs and breaking them apart, the different types of distractions that your mind can create. The biggest we get in our way the most when it comes to any type of intuition. So I would say that while I'm interested in it, and I've delved into that, I don't focus in too much on it. Although, as I said before, in terms of my Akashic reading, I wound up doing a remote viewing of that situation. And I actually saw my shoes that I wore in the university and the color of
Wow.
the building. So I drew that. I drew the building, and I looked on the computer, and I looked up the Charité. There was a red building with a corridor, a hall area where, like a courtyard on the outside. And it was what I drew. So that was something that assisted me in terms of what I needed.
And I'm wondering too, like if deja vu, you have these moments, we all have these like deja vu moments of right then and there. And in that moment, you feel like, wow, I've been here before. Something about this seems familiar. And I'm wondering if that's what we're tapping into. Either maybe a parallel universe of some sort, or just tapping into maybe an experience or an encounter that we had
Right.
perhaps in a
Well,
past life,
well, I don't think time is linear.
I don't either.
I
Yeah.
think that we are connected to different aspects of our past, and they're playing out, and we're returning and going forward at different places and different times. And I think when we need the information to enhance our soul, I think we can get in contact directly with those energies in that time frame in order for us to be directly in contact with the emotional feelings that help us grow and help create a shift for us. It's funny because when I was in Germany in 1987, I was meeting soldiers who were from World War II. I was 21. And my ex-wife's family, and many of them were in the Army. And they were connected to me. They would talk to me as if I was one of their comrades, even though I was 21 years old and they were in their mid-60s. I'd go to the bar with them and have a beer and a drink with them, and they didn't say a word, and I didn't say a word, and they would just sit there, and they would look out the window and just drink their sorrows or their traumas away.
Yeah.
And I was like a news reporter taking this in. But everywhere I went, like I'd go in Germany, a guy would tell me, I was in the submarine division. Just tell me out of nowhere. I'd be walking in the street, and a guy would come up to me and say, "Hey, hello." And I'd say, "Yes." He'd say, "You know who I was?" I'd say, "No, tell me." He goes, I was in the bombers. I would drop bombs, and I would take pictures of the surveillance out of nowhere. So it was something to bring me to remember and to resolve the issues that I had experienced in that life that were now affecting me in this life, and that I needed to resolve. Trust. I needed to, self-love, my own identity, a Jewish mother, a Russian father, having been in Germany, all of these different entities or these different energies pulling and pushing at me created this feeling of like, all right, what do I do? Like, how do I resolve this? But I think life itself just naturally, went in its direction and actually brought me to the places I needed to go because I was open to hearing and listening to the spirit and listening to my inner voice.
Absolutely. When you're open-minded and you are living through your heart and your soul, that's when the ascension happens, I think. And that's when, we can really heal
Yeah.
and evolve.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have a very interesting story about how you've utilized Akashic Records in exploring your ancestry. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I would say that the Akashic Records brought itself to a connection of not only my past life, but also to my ancestors, and the connection to my own experience. Let's say I was divorced, and I have two children, and the experience of divorce, separation, is a very painful,
Yes.
a living painful experience. Where the possibility of connection is great, but the possibility of rejection is also great, and
Yeah.
separation.
Very well said. Yeah.
And for me, I as a 7-year-old, I would visit my grandmother's house. I would go to a house in Brooklyn. She was a block and a half away from me. And when I had trauma and stress in my house, when my father was aggravated and he didn't handle things too well, I was very sensitive. I was very intuitive at that age. I knew that I needed to either fight back or get out of the house. So I went to my grandmother's house, which was a block and a half away. And what happened was she would sit me down and she would feed me food, but her real intention was to show me photo albums. And she would take out these photo albums, and I'd look through them as a 7-year-old, and I was not interested, but then eventually I was very interested. And I started turning the pages, and I came to this man in a military uniform. I asked my grandmother who this person was, and she said, "This is your grandfather. And I said, my grandfather. It didn't look like the grandfather that she was living with. So I stored it in my mind. I went home. I asked my father, I said, Dad, did you know your father was a soldier? And he said, leave me alone. I don't want to talk about that subject. So I buried it a little bit, but every time I went to my grandmother's house, she would take out the photo albums, but I would go to the photo album with that picture of the men in a military uniform. I would take out that photo album. To make a long story short, as the years progressed, I would keep going to the drawer. I would look at the photos. My father, eventually, when he came over, I'd say, Dad, this was your father? He said, yes, this was my father. I go, did you know him? He goes, no, I didn't. I don't even know what happened to him. Huh. So I said, and it was just buried, except my grandmother would then share stories, war stories about World War II, and said that he was a school teacher and that she saw him the last time before he got killed, a week before he was sent to the front. And that was the end of the story. Skip 20 years later, 30 years, 40 years later, I'm going through this divorce, and the memory of myself saying, you know, we're each one of us comes into this life, and some people are more famous than others. Some people have a greater story than others. Some people get into the limelight. They earn more money than another person, but that doesn't mean that they're better. And it doesn't mean that their story should be better than someone whose story isn't told yet. And I thought about my grandfather, who was a soldier who died during the war. He lost his last name because my grandmother remarried a new man with a different last name. My father's name changed. My name changed. And this man was forgotten about. He was a school teacher. He gave his life to the war effort. He was well respected. And I said, it's so easy for us to be forgotten. You know, once we die, once we're gone, what do we have as a remnant for family members to remember us? Sometimes it's just photos, and even photos get thrown out and people don't even know the person's name.
Right.
Well, I didn't want that chain to be broken. So when my grandmother passed away, she had a treasure chest of all her photos, but in that treasure chest of photos was also a diary or diary entries from many different diary entries. And I said, wow, what is this? I opened them up and they were written in Russian, I thought, but it was Russian letters, but it was the Komi language, which is an indigenous people of northern Russia. Make a long story short, I had all these diaries translated by a family member that I sent over randomly with one of the addresses in one of her books that she had, and it was her aunt. And she translated all these pages and so on. And I wound up finding my grandfather's grave. I wound up finding the family of my father's, this person in this photo. And I made a documentary film, which played in the film festivals in the tri-state area.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow, what an honor.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. You know, it's my grandfather, my maternal grandfather actually was a doctor in World War II. And so he actually was on the, oh gosh, what was it? The USS Ormsby. So I'm wondering, do you know if your grandfather actually sailed on either the RMS Queen Mary or Queen Elizabeth by chance?
My grandfather was a Russian soldier.
Okay, so that's
yeah,
right. So
he died on the
that's right.
in the front.
That's right.
Yeah, as a ski soldier. Yeah, so he was in the Battle of Moscow.
Yeah, yeah, okay, Russian, yeah, I was thinking, I forgot about that, yeah, so I was thinking, well, maybe, yeah, American, it could have been
You never
because,
know.
yeah, I mean, I've been researching the Queen Mary for years, and, once America entered the war after the attack on Pearl Harbor, she started her GI shuttle days and, escorting all these U.S. troops, so I forgot he was Russian, so, wow, and so you were able to locate his resting spot, which is phenomenal, and in this documentary, really telling his story. So it's almost like in a way you got closure for that and for him as well.
Well, I got closure for it helped me better understand my father. So, I mean, we have relationships with our parents, and it's so easy for us to distance ourselves from the traumas and stresses.
Yes.
And while it's respectable for a person to either do that or not do that or whatever they choose to do, inevitably, I think it's someone's responsibility in the family to understand or break the cycle or the chain of dysfunction that takes place in families. And I think for me, had I not done the work of finding my grandfather, not bringing closure to the male line in my family, and not understanding where things were at a continuum, I felt that something was missing and had to be fixed. And so I felt it was my calling to do this work, to go and find him and bring him back into the family. So that in essence, my father had closure also, because my father was traumatized as a war child, going from country to country. And he had no clue actually what his father's last name was. He didn't know his father was even a soldier, like what he was. He had no idea. He knew nothing. He knew absolutely nothing. And I brought his memory back into the family. And my documentary film shows that particular, episode or him confronting, looking at the picture of his father for the first time, and well, not the first time, but looking at it under my eyes, and him breaking down and looking at his name and not even knowing how to say it, but crying when he's saying it. So it was a very touching film, and it was a touching moment, but it was also touching for me to know that we can bring back people who've passed on from our family into the memory of the family.
Absolutely.
And that person could be us one day.
Absolutely. Beautifully, beautifully said. Can your film, is it online?
I have it on my YouTube channel. It's called Forgotten.
Oh, okay. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, I can't wait to watch it. This is the type of inspiration that inspires me, and some of the most beautiful work from people, I think, are inspired by that soul felt calling. And when we have a calling to do something, you have to follow your heart and just do it. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
it was.
There is a comment here. You're going to be able to translate this,
Yes,
not me.
okay.
I don't have my translator out yet on my
I'll
phone.
translate it to you. So it says, wow. It says, many thanks, Adam and Nicole, for an absolutely fascinating show. I hope I hope one day to meet you. And many thanks.
Oh, awesome. Good stuff. That's amazing. And then, so what's your YouTube channel? Because someone's asking for the link
My
for.
YouTube channel is, well, I'll send it to you. It's called Conversations with Adam Gell and Inspiring Minds.
Oh, that's easy. Okay, I like that. Ooh, inspiring minds. I love that.
Yeah,
That's phenomenal.
conversation. It's a little bit long, but it's what I felt was necessary. So it's
You know what?
Conversations.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got to go with your heart. And your website too, AdamGellUniversalHealing.com, which is, I love the name of that as well. So I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Adam Gell Universal, Healing.com. So we have about like almost 15 minutes left in the show. UFOs always fascinate me. So I want to get into your UFO experience and what that meant for you and where that fits into the equation of things for you.
Well, I think that once we go we go up the rabbit hole
Yeah.
of opening up ourselves to spirit. I think there's like almost a checklist of things that come our way, or we're going to check off and recognize how vast the universe is. And I think one of them is our connection to the galactic energies and entities that exist in this universe and throughout.
Absolutely.
And I think once we're able to crack that understanding that we are not the only ones that exist, and as we look back on many of the prophecies, the Hopi prophecies, the Hopi people, the different connections that people can read in other people, whether they're Palladians or from Sirius or Arcturians, all the different types of alien races that people can actually, speak of and have a connection to other people through this. And, I've interviewed people like Angela Thompson Smith, who's written Voices from the Cosmos, who had connection to different alien groups.
Yes, I'm familiar.
Yeah. And I myself have run into people who've told me that they weren't from here, or they had a connection, or there was some type of abduction that took place. They didn't get into it too much, but I knew, I was being connected to these people in some connection in some way. One of the interesting things was I was in New Hampshire about 3 years ago. And I told my girlfriend, I said, something happened in this specific town. It was, I think Lincoln, New Hampshire. Might have been Lincoln. I'm not sure. Anyway, I looked it up, and on the internet said this was the place where the first abduction of Betty and Barney Hill took place. The Betty and Barney Hill story. And I said, in the exact town, in this hotel, this little town, is where this took place. And actually out my hotel room was the plaque where the state registry, validated the fact that it took place. And they had a sign on the street saying, here is the place where Betty and Barney Hill were abducted. And I said that I felt that something was right there. So for me, that connection of having that understanding, created also this feeling of being connected to the universe and the possibility of some type of maybe connection. And then maybe in that summer, I was on the beach and I sat on the beach, and all of a sudden, about maybe 400 or 500 feet out of the air came this disc. And then I looked at it, it looked like a balloon, but then it flattened out and then it just took off right into the clouds. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So how did it
Excuse me.
I remember I was watching you on another interview and you said it almost looked like, oh God, how did you word it? Like a sideways balloon
Yeah, it looked
in
like
a way, which is just so, when I was hearing you talk about that, the first thing that I thought was, wow, that's kind of what the Hindenburg actually looked like. It kind of like that, where it
well,
kind of
yeah,
had that
pill. That was a
sideways.
pill shape. Yeah.
Yeah. Was
Yeah.
that, have you, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I've had the interesting thing was, I think opening up to this realm of understanding happened when I would have just conversations with random people, and they say, I never told anybody, but I saw this disc when I was like 14, and my neighbor's mother came out and said, "Did you see that?" And it took off. And then there was this 85-year-old man, actually, speaking of the Hindenburg, he said, when I was in New York, the Hindenburg came through, and that was the day it exploded in Lakeview, Lakeview or Lakehurst, New Jersey. He said, I was crying when I saw it. I don't know if I was crying because I saw the swastika, he said, or I was crying because I knew something was going to happen.
Yes.
And sure enough, it exploded, obviously on its landing in New Jersey. But yeah, I would say that these people were sharing stories with me because I had an interest, but also I guess they felt, on a subconscious level that they could express something that was deeper, and maybe I would have an understanding of it. And it certainly did. The other day, actually, I'm in Jersey, and I looked out at the west, and I saw this yellow orb floating around, which wasn't as interesting as another experience, which was a blue, like Roman candle going off over the parkway, maybe like 6
Oh,
o'clock at
wow. Okay. Yeah.
night. Yeah.
So, and I think we have these sorts of experiences when it's time and when it's meant for us. And in my work, I've always been intuitive myself, and I've found just like exposing myself and being more open to it, these senses just get greater, and you have more of these experiences and more of these synchronistic types of encounters. And UFOs are fascinating. I was actually real quick driving. I'm in San Diego, California, and I was in my neighborhood. And it was summertime, and it was right before dusk, and we had just had a rainstorm, and so it was still partly cloudy. The clouds were kind of clearing, and I happened to look up, and it was a round, definitely a disc, but on the edge of it there were these blue lights just on the edge of it, and they just kept blinking in and out. And I was because I was at a red light, and I was staring up there at the sky, and then all of a sudden it vanished just like that. But it's such a oh God, I don't know how to describe it when you have an encounter like that. It's like it's intriguing, but you want to know more.
Yeah.
You want to like delve more into like, who are they? Where are they coming from? You want that connection. It's just, I don't know. That's how I feel.
I think they're making connection with people they know have an opening to this information. And
yes, I agree.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think they're visiting people that are able to digest the information and pass the information on to others in a way that maybe opens them up to the, spreading of their introduction into our lives, which they're here
Absolutely.
anyway, but, in a more profound manner that people would actually be able to download and receive information that puts them on this journey.
Well said. And your opinion too with the pandemic, I kind of think outside the box a little bit. And I feel like, yes, we have this pandemic, but there's a greater reason for it. And it's almost being put there in place for us to teach us that, okay, we need to ascend. And I think that that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of discord out there in society now is people are being faced with this and they don't necessarily know how to do it. So, that's just my thought, but in the people that you've worked with, have you found that since the pandemic or in the last couple of years that people are getting more in touch with their soul and their inner guide and their intuition?
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
I think the last couple of years has been a pressure cooker. I think it's squeezed
Yes.
people almost like the pressure of sandstone turning to coal to a diamond.
Yeah. Good
I think
analogy.
I think that when we're pressured and we use it in the right manner and we manifest it into the positive energy, we can grow from it, and it forces us to challenge ourselves. If we hold on to the handrail and we choose to remove ourselves from the pressure and become victims of circumstances, I think we don't grow. So I think these couple of years have put us in this mindset of growth if we use it to our advantage.
That's so well said. Yeah, you can just feel the ascension. You can just feel that I call it a cause. That's just my terminology, but there's some sort of greater cosmic shift going on. And it's just something that we need to really pay attention to.
Well,
And
yeah.
some people are oblivious to it, but there are many out there that are recognizing it.
Well, in
And
the
so,
shamanic tradition, it started in 1993, what is known as the Pachacuti, which is the transformation of the earth. The Pachacuti is the north energies and the southern energies balancing. The eagle from the north, the condor from the south, the masculine and the feminine meeting one another and uniting together to share the different energies together, so that they fly together in peace, in strength, and in understanding and compassion. And so that, while it started in 1993, it's a natural progression of the earth shifting away from the aggression, but more into the intuitive side.
oh, it's beautiful, beautiful, beautifully said. This has been such an amazing hour. It's flown by so fast. I'd love to have you back on the show sometime soon because there's so many different, avenues we can go down. In the last couple of minutes, any events coming up, anything that you would like to promote, websites, even though I mentioned it
Yeah,
earlier,
well,
anything like that?
I would say that my website is my biggest promotion in terms of assisting people on their journey, helping them
Fantastic.
open themselves up, open their soul's path to finding themselves. And they could reach me at Adam Gell, universalhealing.com. And they can look at some of my exercises, breathing exercises, and my interviews on conversations with Adam Gell and Inspiring Minds. So
Oh,
thank you.
yes, thank you. I mean, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your wisdom, and your story is just very inspiring. And I know it's it's going to reach a lot of people. It already has. So thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a fantastic weekend coming up. And then if anyone's listening that is in the Southern California area and you want to get away, you can come see us at the OC Paracon at the Sonesta Hotel on October 1st and 2nd, right there, right across the street from Disneyland in Anaheim, California. So I'll be speaking there about the Queen Mary and then on a panel as well. And as I mentioned, Kelly Brickle and Pete Orbea will also be there as well from the station. Again, I want to thank tonight's guest, Adam. You are fabulous, amazing story. Keep doing what you're doing. And I'd love to get you back on sometime if you're
Absolutely.
interested.
Yep.
And so again, have a happy, safe weekend. Those out in Florida, please stay safe from Hurricane Ian. Hope you guys are going to get your power on soon. And that's about it. Thank you for joining us tonight and exploring that connection between life, death, and beyond. And we will see you next week, guys. All right. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.